So we've started recording. So what is a web service? If someone was to ask you, what's a web service? Typically, web services, Sriti, they are software applications that we use over and over again. So it makes sense because we use this software, so many times, it makes sense to build this software once, put it on the internet, and make every other software call this software. And you might think, okay, well, why do we have to go through that trouble? Think about, a software that does taxes. I can guarantee you there's so many businesses out there that need to do taxes or even currency converter. Every day I go to the US, I always have to convert, my Canadian dollars to American dollars. Things like temperature, there are a lot of softwares that will check the weather temperature for you. So these things, because we use them over and over again, why do I have to go build a new one every time I need to use it? So that was why in IT we said, okay, let's create something. We'll call it a web service. We'll create it once, and anytime anybody needs it, you can always go call it. Now, let me show you a very perfect example of a web service that you use every day, but you might not know that is a web service. Look at this MSN page. So this is the MSN Canadian page, but I'm sure the American version is very similar. Now, see what's going on here. This is a news page. This is where I frankly get all my news from. And if you notice, something happened about 10 years ago. Microsoft decided that it doesn't make sense for them to have a news department where they had 2,000 staff or 2,000 employees working every day just to make news. They thought they're not the best at that. Why don't they create a space, right? Then have other news companies that are really good at making news, have them write on that space. And that was what happened. So Microsoft closed down their news department or their media team. They fired about 2,000 people. And what they essentially did was they opened up this page to different companies that are really good at news. So what you're seeing here, Tris, is all different web services. Now, to know the name of the web service, if you look on the bottom here, you can see the name of the company. So in this little box here, this is a web service that Microsoft is calling from Evening Standard. This is a web service here that Microsoft is calling from Entertainment Weekly. This is one from Canadian Press. This is one from Fox News. This is one from Fox News, from The Independent. So this page here is just a collection of different web services. And I think that idea makes sense, right? Now, if you go to a different website, maybe Yahoo, you might get the same news because Yahoo as well, they might be calling the same company's web service. So the content will be the same. And that's how, we consume web services every day. So, okay. Now we have two types of web services. We have the SOAP web service and we have the REST web service. This is the full meaning of the names. Don't ask me to, I don't remember the names as well, but it's good to remember it for an interview. So a SOAP is a simple object access protocol, and a REST is a representational state transfer. So in the 1990s, SOAP was the first one that was built, and it was built by Microsoft. And SOAP was designed for security. I have a web service. Yes, I want this web service to be somewhere on the internet, but I don't want to make this web service easily accessible to everybody. In fact, I want to give you something first before you can call my web service. So that was what SOAP was designed for. And SOAP is very popular in banks, healthcare, any industry, government, any industry where there's privacy concerns, right? There's an absolute need to protect people's information. You find they'll most likely have a SOAP web service. Now, in 2018, on the early 2000s, the companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, Instagram, these companies, their business is volume. They have websites where there are tons of millions of users. So for them, security is not really their major priority, but their priority is performance. You want your web service to be fast because 1 billion people, like Facebook, 1 billion users might be calling you every month. So speed was the priority. And in trying to solve that problem, we designed the REST web service. So SOAP is security and REST is performance web service. Now, let me show you another web service that you might use every time and you might not know is a web service. If I go to Facebook, now if I was to ask you, do you have Facebook account? You're probably going to smile and tell me, yes, I have one. Everybody has one. Now, if everybody has a Facebook account and we have a problem of storing passwords, every website you go to, you have to create a username, a password, and believe it or not, I don't remember all my passwords for every website. And I know it's not safe to keep using the same passwords for every website. So how do we solve that problem? We solve that problem by saying, well, if everybody has a Facebook account, right, why don't we make that Facebook login a web service so that other websites can always call Facebook to verify the user? And if Facebook says, yes, Sriti she gave me the right username, Sriti gave me the right password, that means it is Sriti, right? So that's what we did. Now you find every website now, we have this functionality, sign up with Facebook or continue with Facebook. Or nowadays I see Google, right? A lot of companies also have Google. Let's go to Airbnb. This is a very popular website that we book homes in Canada. I'm sure you guys have the same thing in the US. Oh, I'm actually logged in. Let me log out. Now, if I'm trying to log back into Airbnb, you will notice here too, voila. In fact, they don't even take your username and password. See, the first thing they show you is login with Facebook. It's also a web service. So what you're seeing here is a REST web service. And we use it every day. Look at this one here, Google. They assume that everybody has a Gmail account or everybody has a Google product of some sort. So why ask you to create your email and password again? Just use that sign-on. So this web service is what we call the single sign-on REST web service. And we use it every day. So now you should know what a web service is. You should know why, we have web services, the problem that we're trying to solve. And lastly, you should know the different types of web services. Any questions so far? No question? You're good. Okay, lovely. All right, now let's go into REST web service. Sorry, SOAP web service. SOAP web service uses a language called XML. And you might be thinking, why did we choose XML? There are different languages.
For XML, I think I needed more explanation because I went to that link that you shared, W3 Schools, and they have different types of XMLs and things like that. But I'm not very comfortable because the explanation given in them is not very detailed. and I took this quiz. I think I just got 50% correct in it, because the quiz is like asking some types of questions which are not even there in that document. So if you can go in depth, because there is some like they have like XML standards over there, and in XML standards they have XML XPath and XSTs and everything. So those things, I think those were the topics that I was also asking you, like XPaths and XSTs. So if you can go in more like description, like detail on those things.
All right, sure. We can break it down. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you want me to spend more time, go in depth with you with XML. All right. Sounds good.
Not exactly like XML, but those things that I yesterday I spoke to you, like annotations, cachings, XSTs, XPaths. So I felt like for when I was going through those the W3 School's XML document, then they had those XPath, XSDs in this, but they haven't explained it very properly, and it's not clear in there. So those things, like these basics, I'm pretty clear, but I want to go in more, deeper level in few advanced topics, like how to actually use those things in SoapUI and those things like that I just told you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's get started, and you can slow me down, you can stop me, and we'll keep going. So XML, why XML? Why didn't we use Java or C++ or HTML? Why did we choose this language? The reason is XML is a data transfer language. That's all it does. XML just moves data. It moves data from one point to another point. That's it. So you're a web service, you are in maybe London, UK, and I want to call you from Canada, and all you do is when I call you, you send me some data. So XML was the best language to use. Now XML, let's pick date. Let's say, for example, there's a date software that tells today's date. And this software lives, or this web service lives in England, right? London, UK. Now, you know that date in the US, I believe, is month first, then day, then year. That's how Americans write the date. In Canada, I think it's the same thing. Now, in the UK, it's different. They write their date by day first, month second, then year. In Asia, I think it's maybe Middle East, I think it's the other way around, where they go year, they go month, and they go day. Now, just look at this complexity. Just, different parts of the world, data might mean something different. So if I was to send a web service that says 0101, maybe 01, how would you know what this is? Does this mean the first day in January in 2001? Or does this mean, the other way around? Does this mean, well, I guess this example is maybe they all mean this, but what I'm trying to say is this a month or a day or a year? Same thing here. Is this a month or a day or a year? So to eliminate this confusion within web services, we decided to use XML. And XML, what it does is for every single data that XML sends, it always tags the data with something I would call a property. So now if I'm trying to send this across now, what I would do is this. I would tag this data to say, the first thing I'm sending you is the month. And the data is 01. And I'll finish off, on the other side that the data is finished because I'll close the tag. this is a valid XML code because it has the property or the element, which is month, and it has the data that you send in. And lastly, the other side knows that this data is finished when they see a closing tag. So let me send this old data. If I was to send this old thing across, it will look like this. Day, 01, and day. And same thing, if I was to send the year across, it will look like that. I can even say 01, year. So that's the first rule that you need to know in XML. Now, it doesn't matter what part of the world you are in. Once you get this, you know exactly what it means. And that's why we chose XML. So I said it's used by web services. We used to transfer data, and XML, that's all it does. So when you send in an email, that's also a web service, right? On the front end, which is your GUI, you might see something like this. But now let's see what this will look like in an XML page. Voila. Let's pay attention here. Let's study what's going on. The first thing you notice is what we call the XML header. And this XML header is right here. All it does is it tells you the version of the XML that you're using, and it tells you the encoding. These two always goes together. And I always tell my students, you don't have to learn, or you don't have to worry about this. Wherever you go, you're always going to find, the XML version and the encoding is what tells, the web service, okay, this is XML version 1. So that's the header. Now, the next thing you'll notice is what we call the parent tag. The parent tag is, the biggest tag. It is the one with the widest scope. And if you notice here, note is the parent tag because every other element falls right underneath note. So what this means is this. If a web service is sending this, on the other side, the other web service gets notes. Okay, I'm sending you a note. And he knows that this note is finished when he sees the closing tag. So he goes, okay, you're sending me a note, okay. Oh, you're sending me 2 now, okay. This is data for 2. Oh, this is the end of 2. Okay, you're now sending me from, and it goes, until it gets to the end of note. So that's a very simple XML syntax. Let me show you another one. This one here, the same thing. We have a header that defines the version of the XML, and breakfast menu is my parent tag. So you can tell this is a restaurant. Maybe I have a restaurant in Toronto and I have another one in the States, and I'm trying to send my new menu from one restaurant to another restaurant, right? So in that XML, this is what it looks like. My breakfast menu, it goes all the way and it ends here. So these are all breakfast menu. Then the first tag is the food. So this is the first food I'm sending. So it starts here and it finishes here. Now in my food, you can call that the child element. I have grandkids. So my grandkids is now name. So I'm sending the name of a food. I'm sending the price of a food. I'm sending the description of a food and the calories of the food. So you can see it goes, it's all the same, same style. So don't forget there are a few rules in XML, which is every parent tag must have a closing tag. Every child tag must have a closing tag. Every grandparent, every grandchild tag must also have a closing tag. Sometimes we call the parent, we call it the root element. So then when I ask you, what's the root element? They're just basically asking you, what's the parent element? Grandchild and child, we call them elements as well. And each element can have an attribute. Now, let me explain what that is. Look at this here. This is a different XML where the root element is the bookstore, right? You can see bookstore is the big one that has the widest scope. So this is the root element. Now the parent element, the child element is book. But notice here that book now has a property. We call that property, we call it attribute. So elements have attributes. That's what I'm trying to say. This is it, the parent element, this is the child element, and this child element has an attribute. Once you understand all these attributes, XPath is very easy to understand. Because XPath is essentially, you're tagging it. You're saying, okay, go to the parent, go to the child. Once you get to the child, go to an attribute of the child. That's what an XPath is an address. So I can do my XPath and say, I want to get this guy, Harry Potter. So essentially, what I'm saying is, I'm going to say bookstore, because that's the first attribute, right? Then I'm going to come down to the book. Then I'm going to say, for the book, that the category is children. So that's the XPath. It's come here. Once you're here, go here. Now, once you find the category that of children, please return the title. Now, the title also has another attribute that is language. So Harry Potter would be bookstore, book category when it's children, and title when it's English. Now, that's the XPath that will return Harry Potter. So I've shown you the different elements and the attributes.
So for this thing, the language title, so if you are going to this XPath title, Harry Potter, so you have to go to bookstore.
Very good. Yes.
Then title. That's it, right?
No, because think about it. If I go to bookstore and title, there are so many books, there are so many titles in the bookstore. So if I want to return Harry Potter, I need to tell it bookstore.
And the category.
And the category, good. Bookstore, then children category, then the title in English. Then it goes, okay, there's only Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the only book in the children category. So it returns Harry Potter. Same thing here. If you want to return J.K. Rowling, what you do is bookstore. Once you get to the bookstore, you want to look for the book that has a category of children. Then once you find that, you now go next and say return the author.
Okay.
You will see it. You will see it in SoapUI. I just want to make sure you get it clear.
Actually, how we do it in SoapUI, that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. Don't worry. You'll get there.
Thing, right? You go to parent, then child, and grandchild. That's it.
Very good. Good. And they have different they have attributes. So the attribute as well, it has to be in the XPath, the name of the attribute. But you see, we'll get there.
Okay.
Alrighty. So now that you know the XML structure, you know what an XML looks like. There are a few do's and don'ts that you need to remember always, especially once you get into SoapUI. The first rule is every XML must have a parent element. We call it a root element. The XML header, which I showed you, is optional. Like this thing here is optional. But if you're going to put the header there, it always has to be the first line. In fact, all the SoapUI tools, when you create a new project, by default, they always put this there for you. So you don't have to worry about it. But if you ever mess up your XML document and you're trying to fix it, please know that this has to be on top. Every element, it doesn't matter if it's a parent, a child, a grandchild, once you have an opening tag, you need to close your tag. A mistake that I see a lot of new QAs make is case sensitive. XML is very case sensitive. What I'm trying to say is price, all lowercase, is not the same as uppercase P. So sometimes in your XPath, you need to write the exact same, case. Don't make it upper or lower. It must match exactly with the XML document. XML attributes. Now you know what an attribute is. An attribute exists with an element. An element might have an attribute. And I'm telling you now that every XML attribute must always be coded. See, double quotes. So this is an attribute of the book element. This is an attribute of the title element. And you can see I'm putting the values in double quotes.
So if it is a numeric, then we don't use quotes, right?
Yes, if it's a numeric, then you might not, I believe so, yes. You don't need to put an attribute in there, the quote.
Okay.
This is how you write a comment in XML. Sometimes you want to put some comment in your code. So I think it's very important. I always tell my junior QAs, make sure that your code is easy to read. So this is how we do comment in XML. So we're almost at SoapUI. We're almost going to jump in SoapUI, making sure that you know your data types. So, we have...
Can you show comments one more time? Commenting in XML.
Oh, sure. So this is how we write a comment in XML.
Okay, within angular brackets and exclamation.
Exactly. So you notice that it's that. This is the opening tag, and this is how you close it. So in XML, a comment is always in green. The color is in green color. So you notice this as well once we start using SoapUI. I'll put a comment for you. All right, so now the data types. What is a data type? I told you XML, we're just moving data from one side to another side. And that data might come in different shapes and types and form. We could have a character, which is just a single character that we're sending. Sometimes I could have characters of 2 length or 3, and that's what this looks like. I could have a string. Most of the time we don't bother with characters. We always send strings. So string doesn't have any length limit, so it can be literally anything. I can send a Boolean. I can send a true or a false, right? I can send numbers. Now, I can send float and doubles, basically decimals. I can send a time, so time as well. We need to tell XML that this is a time data type. I can send a timestamp. Timestamp is essentially the time and the date put together. Now, the last thing you need to know before we jump into SoapUI is what we call the XML schema. So what is an XML schema? The XML schema describes to you the structure of your XML document. And, to you, what does that mean? This is a very good example of a schema of what I showed you at the very top. Where we're trying to send an email that has from to subject, this guy here. So we're trying to send an email from Tove to Jani, and Jani's trying to say, don't forget me this weekend. And we saw what the XML looks like. So when she presses send, this is what the XML looks like. Now, if you're a tester, maybe you want to make sure that this data is correct, is a correct data type. You want to make sure that this data here is a correct data type. Where do you go to get that information? We normally go to the schema. Yes, go ahead.
So what does version and encoding mean here?
So that's the version, that's the version of your XML. So that's always consistent. Most of the time is always the same thing, so I'll say don't worry about it, but know that it exists in every XML document.
And encoding is always this only.
And encoding is the type of keyboard that you're using. So most North Americans, most of us, we use the UTF-8. So this means this can process any character in the English, on the Western language, A, B, C, D, E, F. That's what this means. If you are sending Chinese characters or you're sending Arabic characters, the encoding will be different. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, this is mostly the same if you're, consuming a web service in English or any Western character, is probably going to be UTF-8. All right. So in XML, I can now say, well, tell me, in my to is a string. Oh, now I know that has to be a string. My heading has to be a string. So I can get the data type from the schema. So that's what the schema helps you as a tester. That's what it helps you with. And XML, SoapUI has a functionality that I can validate my schema to say, okay, is my XML document, does it validate, does it match what the schema says? And if it's a yes, it tells me yes. If it's a no, it tells me no, and it tells me what I've done wrong. All right, so I think that's enough talking. Let's get into SoapUI. So in SoapUI, let me get myself into Do Not Disturb. There we go. So I told you already, we're going to do SOAP testing right now. And I said SOAP is security focused, it's XML based. It was Microsoft developed. There are a few things I have to talk about very quickly before we get into SOAP testing. The first one is SOA, which is just service-oriented architecture. This describes the architecture I was talking about, where we build something once and we put that thing on the internet, on the web, so that everybody can keep calling it as many times as possible. Now, the next thing is a WSDL, which is what we call a web service definition language. And this here is what makes SOAP secured, because this tells you that you can't do any testing without having a WSDL. And I have to give the WSDL to you before you can start testing. And that's what makes it secured. So I'm going to show you what a WSDL looks like very shortly, and we're going to start using it. The next thing you need to know, the XML, that's the language. The next thing you need to think about is your endpoint. Your endpoint is the IP address or the address where the web service lives. I'm going to show you how to create a test case. I'm going to show you how to add your test cases into a test suite. And I'm going to show you how to add expected results. So when you run a web service, how do you check that the response that is coming back is valid? Then once we've done that, we'll do REST. So if you go into your class note, I sent you a web service testing 2. So open that up. We're going to quickly try this web service and see how it works. So now we're going to...
You want me to open that thing?
Or you can just watch my screen,
Okay.
Yeah. But, I would like you to also try it out. I want both of us to be trying it. So if you can open up your SoapUI as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll open.
Okay, good. So this web service we're trying to test is a German bank finder. So, you live in Germany, you're trying to find a bank close to you, and I'm assuming a lot of Germans, they call this web service every day. So yeah, let's test this web service. So this web service returns a sort code, and it returns the name of the bank BIC, the bank zip code, the bank city, which is the location of the bank. It just tells you more about the bank. Now let's go to the website. Let's see what this web service will do. All right. So this is what it looks like on the GUI. And, the idea is you type in something, you press search, and it shows you, the name of the bank. Here's the WSDO. Okay, you're required to test. Now, maybe let's type in maybe a bank in Munich. Let's just see. I know Munich is a city.
So you just copied that thing in URL on the browser, right? That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you copy it, it might show you some Google page. Just click on the first result you get. See? So yeah, once I copied it, it showed me this result. Just click on the first one in Google, and that will take you to that page. So I'm trying to find, okay, let's try Deutsche Bank. Okay, now look at this. This is also the web service at the back, but on the front, users don't know that they're calling a web service. So I've just tried this bank. It's a very popular bank in Germany. I typed in Deutsche Bank, pressed search, and it showed me, a lot of banks, from this bank. Okay, now let's see if we can use SoapUI to get the same result, right? Let's see if we can call the same web service from the back. Now, I told you what you need is, so you're going to your SoapUI and you go File, New Soap Project, because that's what we're trying to test. If you click on the Soap Project, it's going to ask you to give it a name, but look at the next thing it's asking you for. It's saying, give me the WSDO, because as I told you, you cannot test a Soap project without the WSDO. Now, how do you know what a WSDO looks like? A WSDO has two forms. It can either be an address like this that ends with a question mark WSDO, or it could be a WSDO file given to you. So in your coursework that I sent to you, that you tried, I gave you the WSDO in a file. So if you look at your coursework here, see, you have the WSDO given to you as a file. So those are the two ways, you can always use your WSDO. So now I'll copy this because this is an address. I'll copy this WSDO. So try the same thing and paste that WSDO into this box. Now, once I've pasted it, SoapUI is trying to guess the name of the web service. See, from my WSDO, is trying to guess the name of the project. So you can leave that by default, or you can change it and call it something else. It's entirely up to you. So once you've done that, press OK, and you have created your SOAP project.
So the project that you have given in WSDL in a file, it will also have the same WSDL like with a question mark and WSDL at the end, right, in that file?
No. So that would be different. So let's go. Let me show you what a WSDL file looks like. Or basically, let me use the one I sent to you. So there's no magic, right? If I open this guy up, open. This is your coursework. When you open it up, see here. So the file doesn't have a question mark. It has a dot. So it's .WSDL. Can you see that? So what you do in SoapUI is when you create your new SOAP project for your coursework, you have to go browse. See? So you go browse, then this browsing thing is expecting a WSDL file. So okay. I'll go find.
Go to that location.
Very good. File. Exactly. And you press OK, and if it's a .WSDL, then it works. It's telling you, give me the URL or the file name. Now, once you have your file, press OK, and what would happen is SoapUI would now quickly go read the WSDL and get all the web service that you want to test. So now this WSDL has two web services. The first one is called BLZ Service SOAP 11, and the second one is called BLZ Service SOAP 12. The first web service has a web service called GetBank. And if I open up the default request message, for get bank, you will see your XML. Voila. This here is your XML file. Now let's notice something here. Can we see the version? If you notice, the version is not there. You notice that version and the UTF is not there? Right?
Yeah.
That's good. Now that's because some web services, they have a different header. And their header is where they define the schema that they want to use. So this schema, essentially, if you go to this website, you will notice that you see the version of the XML and you see the UTF also present in this schema. So that's why they don't have to specify it. And they're also telling you their company, where they want you to go every time you run this XML. So what I'm trying to say is don't always expect your header to always have, the version number and UTF. Sometimes it could be an envelope that has two things defined. But if you go to those locations, in there you find the XML version number. If you notice here, this is the end of the header. So the header started from here and it's closing here. Right? Now also watch, this is my body. My body closes here. Now I have a get bank, see, that closes here. And I have my, you can call it grandchild element. Now in XML, the question mark is what the web service is waiting for you. Give me the data, give me something so I can get you something, right? So that's what the question mark is. It's saying, give me something. I mentioned the endpoint to you. The endpoint, this here is what we call the endpoint. An endpoint is essentially where the web service lives. So this web service, I'm assuming this is in Germany somewhere. If I go play, basically this request message will get transferred by XML to this location. This location will process it and send me back a response also in XML, and that will show up here. So that's a very simple, request and response. Some people don't like this view because, it's two small screens. If you want to make it one screen, all you need to do is click on this toggle, so this toggle thing, and this will toggle you from your request to your response. So that might be easier for you to look at that way. All right, so now we're in SoapUI. Now, I don't know what this question mark is. I don't even know what data type I should put in here. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Should it be a string? Should it be a character? Should it be a Boolean? I don't know. So the first thing we normally do in SOAP testing is we have to go read the WSDL, because the WSDL would have my XML schema defined in there. And the WSDL will also tell me what to expect, what should be my response. The WSDL will tell me what this whole thing is trying to do. So for a tester, it's very important you always start from the WSDL. So how do you generate the WSDL? How do I read it? It was a file given to me or some funky address, but how do I read it? So the WSDL has an HTML page. And let me try to download the HTML page of the WSDL. So what you do is you click on the name of the service. So this is being recorded for you, so don't worry. And can you see this green thing here? That's where the WSDL lives. So I'll right click and I will say generate documentation. What I'm trying to say is I want, give me the WSDL in an HTML format. So I'll press generate document. I can save this in my desktop. You can save yours anywhere. So I'll save this in my desktop, press open, press OK. And if you have a browser, then voila. I now have the HTML version. Can you see? This is the WSDL report. So this describes to me everything I need to know about that web service. All right. So you want to know, so you can close this. You want to know what this get bank does. What does it really do? So the name of the web service is SoapUI. So let's go find SoapUI. It's the first one, SoapUI. The next one is SoapUI. So now once you get to your SoapUI that you're looking for, you can see the operation. The operation is get bank. So let's click on the detail. I'll click on the detail and look at that. Now this tells you in English what to expect. So it's telling me that, okay, this get bank, this basically, what does it do? Document, operation, okay, this, la, 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 la. It just tells me the endpoint receives a message and it sends you back a response, okay? Now it's telling me the input, see? The input needs a parameter from you, and the parameter, the type is a string. Now I know that, okay, this question mark here, see this BLZ is right here, BLZ. So it's telling me that that needs to be a string. Okay, now look at this. This is quite important, your response. What should the response return back to you? So it's telling you that the response will return back to you the details, because this is in Germany, maybe we could, but it's details, and these things here are what will get returned. One, so the Beisung, the big, the art, these things will get returned back to you. And it's telling you that it's not every bank that would have all this information because they are optional. So this is already giving me enough idea about the kind of response I will get back. So now that I know that, let's play with it. Let's see if we can test it. So maybe this BLZ, let me try, since it's a string, let's see on the GUI when we tested this. I tried this, Deutsche Bank. Let's see if this would work. Now, there was an error. It doesn't like something I've done. So it complained, an exception. So maybe it doesn't like the fact that I put it in a double quote. Deutsche Bank. Okay, it doesn't like that. Let me try another value. BLZ, trying to think, what is BLZ? Okay, that returns something back. All right, so you know what I did? I just picked one of, I was just trying to guess, for a valid value. So I picked one of these guys and I press run, and the server, the response, returns something like this. So let's check this out. Let's see if this is correct. The Wisdo told me that I will get back, the Wisdo said I'll get back 1, 2, 3, 4 things coming back. Okay, and the first one is Bison chunk. Okay, so going to your, yep, see, Bison chunk, big, ORT, please. So good. So I'm getting back my expected results. Now let's verify if this data is correct. So I'll go back into the website, the GUI, and this guy I searched for, this is the name of the bank, Deutsche Bank Film Berlin. Yep, that looks correct. The BIC, let's see, BIC is right here. Deutsche Din. Let's see, is that correct? That looks correct. The city, Berlin, that location, they call that ORT. That looks correct. And this number here, 10083, I think that's a zip. So that also looks correct. Let's try something else. Let's try another one. Maybe let's pick this one. Now this one, or let's pick this one, because this has a different BIC. So I'm calling that web service, and I'm going to put that in, press play, and you can see that the name of the bank is different. Good, it matches. The city, yep. Oh yeah, this is a BIC. I think that's coming back. Look at that. The city is Berlin and 18333. This one, the zip code. So that's a very simple web service that we've just ran. And I've shown you how to get the value, how to know the data type of the value by going into your WSDO. The WSDO tells you a lot of stuff about the data type. And I've shown you how to verify your response because you need to know what is coming back. So that's the first thing you do on most jobs. Now, the second thing you do is this. You kind of know that, I think this is the right value because I've read the WSDO. But a lot of us QAs, we always call the schema and we say, since the schema knows, because the schema was designed by the developer, since the schema knows what my response or my request should look like, for me to know that I'm doing the right thing, all I would do is I'll call the schema to validate my request message. And to do that in SoapUI, you right-click on your request and you click on validate. So this validate thing here, all it does is it compares your request message to the schema to see, okay, is everything okay? Is everything done properly? If I press validate, see, I got back validation is okay. So that means that I haven't broken anything. I haven't done anything wrong. Now watch this. If, for example, maybe I was talking to my friend and I accidentally delete this line, right? And I didn't know, but I said, let's try to validate now. Validate my schema. Can you see? It's telling me that, oh no, there's a problem. On line number 5, you're not closing the tag properly. So this, validation will guide you, especially when you're new to XML. It helps you validate your request message. And it's a very popular interview question where they say, how do you know that your request is correct? How do you know? When you say you find a bug and developer says it's not a bug, then what steps will you take? Well, I'll validate my request with the schema. And if the schema says my request message is okay, then I know that the mistake is not from me. It's a developer or it's a bug. So please don't forget that schema validation. So we just click on validate and that validates the schema. Alrighty, so you know how to run a very simple SOAP web service. You know how to read.
How is this validate different from assertions, like where you're putting checkpoints or something?
Oh, good. I'll show you that. We'll get in there. Because there are two big differences. Very, very different. But we'll get there. So now the next thing is I want to show you how to create multiple request messages. For example, now a QA was given, Ty, you've been hired to verify that this functionality works properly. So maybe you have 5 test cases, right? To test this very simple page. Maybe the first test case is, I don't know, maybe positive test case. So maybe you're saying, verify that, the bank finder can find, bank with sort code of this. Maybe that's, second one, verify that the bank finder can find maybe this one here, right? Then maybe you have a negative, verify that the bank finder cannot find ABC because no bank exists with ABC. So you have 3 test cases, right? I'm sure you have more on the job, but let's just pretend you have 3 test cases. So how do you create all these 3 test cases? It's very simple to do. You go back into your SoapUI and see right here, I have only 1 request message. So if I want to create more request message, you right click on the get bank, which is the web service or the operation, and you say new request. Now it's asking you to give it a name. I always advise people to give it the test case ID. So if this is test case 002, and maybe you're saying verify bank 2, right? Yeah, I can give it that name and I can press OK. So you can see now that I have 2 web services, and because it's a new one, it has a question mark. Let me try the third one. So the third one is my negative. So I'll right click on get bank. I will say TC003, and I'll say negative bank 3. I have 3 now. Now for my first one, I want to rename that first one, right? So how do you rename? To rename it, you just right click and you press rename, and I'll say TC001, and I can say verify bank 1 and press OK. So now this is how you create multiple request messages or test cases. And the beauty is now I don't have to keep changing any of them. So the first one, I can go in there. Yep, that looks good. I'm happy with that. My second one, I can go in there and put my test data. So my test data is from this site. I'll copy it from there, put it there, run it, make sure it works. Okay, that's good. And my third one is my negative, which is ABC. So this should return back a server error. Good. See, not found. I'm sure if you translate this in Germany, it probably tells you bank not found or something like that. So that's good. It's a negative, and I got my expected result. But if I was to ask you every time that, okay, maybe you found a bug, and when you found the bug, the developers fixed something, and then I'll tell you, okay, can you go back and do a regression test? You're going to come back here and run each one every single time, which is very time consuming. It's very annoying. Let me show you something I do on the real job. We have a lot of web services. This is one of my clients here. Look at that. Look at how many SOAP web services they have. Almost 20, if not more than 20, 23 web services. And I can't sit there and just be running each one every time. That's going to take forever. So now is now time to automate. We can automate all those scripts. To do that, what I'll do is I'll convert my request messages into a test case. Then I'll create one test suite and put all my test cases inside that test suite and just run that test suite once. So to do that now, I'm going to right click on my request message.
Sorry, can just 1 second, like I'm getting a bit confused. Like for creating these requests, you just right click on it, and
right.
Can you see one more request? 1 second.
Okay, sure. So you right click on the name of, so it's not the first one. The first one will get me the wisdom. The second one is the one I'll right click on to get my new request.
Okay.
So I'll press new request, give it a name, press OK.
And this thing comes automatically. You don't need to do anything, right?
No, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And you just enter the like parameters, like in
very good. Very good. You got it?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope you're also trying it out. Are you doing the same thing I'm doing? Are you there? Okay.
Yeah, I actually I have both, like everything on the same computer. So if I go and open SoapUI, I'll be missing your session. So
okay. All right, but don't worry, everything is recorded. You know,
yeah.
I'm recording, so once I'm done teaching you, you can play back the video and just try the same thing step for step.
Okay.
All right, so I've shown you how to create multiple request messages. Now we want to get smart. We want to, you know, I don't want to be running each one every single time. So we're going to create test cases. and we're going to add all our test cases into a test suite. Now, so to do that, I'll right click on my first request message and I'll say add to test case. So when I click on add to test case, SoapUI is telling me you don't have a test suite. I'll go, okay, please create a test suite for me. If you want to change the name, it's entirely up to you. I can call it test suite.
Is there a way to create a test suite first and then create a test case instead of giving an option like add test case? We add first create a test suite and
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because SoapUI knows if you have a test suite. Well, I'll put it this way: the first time you're trying to create a test case, that's when you create a test suite.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you've done it before, it will ask you this again, but it's always the first time that you get this message.
And so this is the only route to create a test suite. We don't have any other option to create a test.
Yes.
Okay.
So you press OK. Now it's saying, what's the name of your test case? So I'll say my test case, I'll call it the same thing, call it TC001. So that's my test case ID. And it's going to show you this screen. Just click on the default, so don't change anything here, and press OK. Now, watch what would happen. Look at that. So don't get nervous. On the left-hand side, if you notice here now, I have a test suite. And the test suite looks like this little box, with an arrow in the middle. This is a test suite. And now, can you see? I have my test case. So my test case, I call it TC001. And in my test case, I have something called a test step. And now you can see my actual SoapUI request message is now inside of my test step. So I have a test case, I have my test step, and I have the same request message from here. I now have a copy in here. The load test, that's for performance testing. Don't worry about that for now. Security test, that's for penetration testing. So don't worry about that for now. Okay, let's try the same thing for number 2. Number 2, I'm going to right click on it and I'll say add to test case. Now watch what would happen. Now because I have a test suite already, it's now telling me, do you want to add this test case to your test suite number 1 and test case number 1? I can say yes, but that's not what I really want to do. I want to basically add it to the same test suite, but create a new test case. If I want to create a new test suite and add this to a new test suite, I can do that as well. But most of the time, it makes sense to have just one test suite and many test cases. So I'll pick the second one and I'll press OK. Now it's asking me for a name for my test case 2. I'll call it TC002 and I'll press OK. Same thing here. Press OK on the default values and voila, I have the same thing. I now have the same test suite 1. I have test case 1. I have test case 2. Inside of test case 1, I have my get bank, verify bank 1. Inside of my test case 2, I have my bank, I have my get bank, verify bank number 2. We can minimize it to make it easier to look at. So you can minimize. So there you go. So this is easier to see. Test suite, test cases. Now the beauty of this is, watch. I'll try the same thing for my negative quickly. So quickly create a new test case for this guy. Add to test case. Please create it and put it in test suite 1, but create a new test case. Press OK. Give it a name, TC003, and press OK. Default, press OK. And I can minimize it as well. So I now have one test suite with 3 test cases. If I double click on my test suite, now this is the beauty of why we do it. I only have one play button and I have 3 test cases inside of it. So if I push the play once, look at that. Within 5 seconds or less than 5 seconds, SoapUI has ran all my 3 test cases. So that's what we call automation. When you automate your test, it saves you from manually going here to run it one step at a time. You can easily just, have a test suite and have all your test cases inside of your test suite. But if you notice here, I can't really see the result. All I'm seeing is just this green finished, 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 and it's all green, which is telling me everything is passing. But how do I really know that this response was correct? Well, I can double click on this and go check out the response. I can double click, right, and go see what the response looks like. I can do that. But isn't this manual again? Isn't this the whole, you're doing the same thing again manually? Where you come back here again, you go, okay, double click on it, check out the response. This would take you forever to do. Imagine if you have 30 test cases. So what we now do is we set up checkpoints, or we set up assertions that will do all that test for me, that will check all that stuff for me. And if everything I'm telling you to check for is there, then it passes it. If it's not there, then it fails it. And that saves me a lot of time. So let's try that. Yes, go ahead.
So when you are creating assertions, you are checking the response for a particular value. And when you are validating, right-clicking and validating, you are actually checking the request.
Very good. You got it. Now that's the difference. Okay. Sometimes as well, we also do validation on the response. Maybe you're not getting back the right response, and you know that the request is correct. And the developer is telling you, no, it's your fault. No, it's working fine. Maybe sometimes as well, you can validate the request, the response, to say, okay, is this response actually valid? But you're right. Most of the time, we do schema validation for the request, and we do checkpoint for the response. So you got it. Good. Now, how do I set up checkpoint in my response? It's very simple. You go into your test case. So let me minimize my two test cases. So the first one now, you double click on the actual script. So you double click on it. And once you're there, you can make it bigger. And if you notice, SoapUI has an assertion by default. So an assertion is a checkpoint. And you can see here, there's one assertion by default. Let's open that up to see what it is. This assertion, you can see is green. And it says, as long as your response is valid, SoapUI will return a pass. Meaning, as long as you're getting back something from the server, as long as you're getting back an XML data, that's a pass. Excuse me, I want more than that. So if you want to check that this test case, every time you run this request, you want to make sure that the zip code that is coming back is this, because that's what you're checking for. Or maybe you want to check the name, this guy here. Maybe you want to check the sort code. Maybe that's what you want to verify. Then now we're going to create it. So you copy what you want to verify all the time. Can you see this plus sign? This is how you add your own assertion. So I'll click on the plus sign. And now we have different types of assertions. Contains is probably the easiest one to use to say, please, whenever I run this request, always make sure that the response contains some kind of string value or some kind of property value. Not contains is the opposite. To say, whenever I run this, please always make sure that the response does not contain something. Schema, you know what that is. You can say every time you run this response or this request, please always make sure that my response is compliant with the schema or the WSDL. We can do that as well. We can say SOAP response, meaning that, but SoapUI does this. See, SOAP response. So I don't need to do this anymore because Every test case has this by default. So now let's try contains. So I'll click on contains, press add. Then it's now going to tell me, what do you want to contain? You can tell me, what you exactly want to contain. So if that's what I want to contain, now be very careful that there's no space. If you notice, when I copied my XML from SoapUI, there was a space at the end of it. So I'll remove that space. Oops. I don't want to delete the closing tag. Just make sure that there's no space. So good. If there's a space, delete your space. If sometimes you have this thing coming back in uppercase or lowercase, maybe you can say ignore case. But in this example, I know it's always so every time I run this test case, I now know that SoapUI is doing what I want it to do. It has a valid contains inside of it. So can you try it out from your side? Can you quickly create an assertion? Because once I'm done this, I want to show you the XPath.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't created a project or anything, so I have to. Can you ping me that URL? I have to open the email if you have it.
Yeah, so you have it in your email. You have it by email, but sure, I'll send you the Wisto. So let's take a 5 minutes break where you try it out. I'll go use the washroom, and if you have any problems, I want to see your computer screen so I can help you out. Okay. So I've sent it to you.
How do you share the screen?
I will pass control to you so that way you can share your screen.
Okay. So I'm able to create a project and so yeah, I'm able to proceed. I created a test suite and 2 test cases, and I think I can do it. That's it's happening. So I was just thinking we can move on further, like instead, like I went till that stage where I'm able to create test suite and 2 test cases.
Oh,
Um,
perfect. Okay, so let's carry on.
create a request, additional request, and then convert it to a test suite and add 2 test cases to it. So it looks
Okay.
like I can proceed. So I was just thinking like we can get further into those topics that we wanted to cover. If
Right. Okay. So now The next thing I want to show you is XPath. So you know how to do your verification. Like, let's say, for example, somebody changed your data. Say, for example, now I added an extra number in here. So I put a 5 in here now, and I didn't know. But if you're running your test suite, it should now fail because the checkpoint is wrong. So this is what guides us when we're doing our testing. Okay, so that's good. Now the next thing is, what if you are running your test cases or your script and you need the result, you need maybe the result from this guy, you need the result from here so that you can feed whatever you get here into your next test case. How do you do that? You know, we call that dynamic automation, where you have to run the first one first, and the result from the first one will get fed into the request of the second one. Now that's when we need to use XPath. That's when we need to use something called property transfer. So let me show you how to do that. I have a project created. So I'll just use the project.
So you will be sending the recording to me, right?
Yeah. You have, this is all yours.
Okay.
Sorry, let me stop sharing so that I can grab what I need quickly. And I'm just going to create a new project and load that up. So give me 2, yeah.
So are we going to cover the load and security test too in SoapUI?
No, we're not. No.
So can you show me like the XPath, XSDs, and how we the various scenarios, like when what we do, like if the visual fails, or if the XPath fails, or the XSD fails, those stuff, like those scenarios they might ask, like, you know, if like a scenario based, like if your visual fails, so where you are checking in which logs, and if your XSD fails, then where do you go and check, or your XPath fails, then what do you check, those things.
Right.
And one more thing, there was like something like annotation and caching too.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm trying to get the project. Okay, so. All right, okay, so I'm ready. Can you see my screen? So I'm going to share with you this project file as well. And this would allow you to do what we call XPath, transferring properties from one request message to another one. And I'll use the XPath to get the value of that property. So let's quickly watch what I'm doing here. This is one of my customers that we're doing web service testing for them. And if you notice here, this is a test case. So we have one test suite with one test case. This test case, if you notice, it has 3 steps. The first one is a request message called put system CD. And the second one is a transfer property. I'll show you what that means. But look at the third one, revoke system CD. So what I'm trying to do is I'm adding something to the application, but I also want to remove what I've added after I've done adding it. But how do I know, what I've added? What I will do is I'll create a property in my test case. So in my test case here, I created a property. Let me try and make it bigger.
So till now we learned how to create a test suite and test cases. But within the test case, how do we create the test steps?
Within the test case, so the test step, okay. Let me see. So go back to our German, okay, right here, right? So this is an example we're using before. By default, a test step is created for you when you create a test case. And your test step would have one script inside of it by default. Now, if I want to create more, what I'll do is I'll right click on the test step and I will add something. So I can either add step.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of things I can add in here. I can add, what I need is a property transfer because I want to move, one property from one request to another one. So you click on property transfer. So I can call it anything I want. Maybe I want to transfer the bank zip code. So I will say property transfer. See, now I have a property transfer element in here. Now, where do I want to move this to? Maybe I want to move this property transfer so I can move it to maybe add another step. And let me add maybe I can add a SOAP request. I can call it maybe test case. Doesn't matter. It's now telling me which web service I'm saying get bank, because that's the one I want to use, 11. Give it a name, that's fine. Okay. So maybe I want to pass the value from here. I want to pass it here. So this is my setup. Now let me go back to the example.
Can you repeat this one from where you're passing it, from the first test step to the third one, right?
Very good, exactly. So we want to pass something from here to the third one. So to do that, you need something called a property transfer. And the way I got that was I right-clicked on my test step and I said add a property transfer. So okay, that would add.
Got it.
You got it?
So you are actually doing is you are taking the response from the first step and putting it as the request to the third step, right?
Very good. I'm taking a value. I'm taking an element or a value from the first one, and I'm making it a request for the third one.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so the next thing you have to do is, once you've done this setup, is you want to create a property, because we're moving stuff around. So if you look at what I've done here in my revoke system CD, I have a property, and the property, let's see, let's put it. I have a property created here. Okay. Put system CD. Okay. Now, so once you have your property transfer, I named it, you can call it anything you want to call it. I'm saying I want to move, in this example here, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to move this ID. Can you see this value here? It's a instance ID. It's just a random number. I want to provide this number is in the response of this guy. I want to put it here. So every time you run it, I want this number to show up here. Right here. Instance ID. I want it to show up. So this is how we do it. Now, if we go into my property transfer, if you notice here, I called it, there's an hash score, test case, hash system CD instance ID. This is a variable. And this is how I'm telling SoapUI that this here is a variable that you're going to get from your property transfer. But let's go into the property transfer and set it up. So my property transfer, the first thing you do is you click on this declare a namespace. And that would add this line. These two lines here, that's the first thing you have to do. You have to say declare a namespace. So you have these two lines given to you. Once you've done that, the next thing is you got to tell it the source. Where do you want the value to come from? So this is where you select your web service. So I'm saying I want my source to be from put system CD, because that's the first one. Then it's telling you, okay, I found the test case you want. The property, what should be where should I get it from? Then I'm saying get it from the response. I can also get it from the request. I can get it from the endpoint, right? We don't have any other thing right now apart from response, request, and endpoint. But I'm saying get it from the response. Now it's now saying, once I find it, how should I get it? How should I retrieve it? I will say retrieve it by XPath. So I've set my source. This is the source. Now, once you've declared your namespace by just pressing this namespace, This would do this declaration for you. Now this here is your XPath code that you need. So the first thing you do is when you're trying to create your XPath code, XPath is the address, right? I'm trying to find to the element. So the first thing you do is your double backslash, and in your namespace declaration, when you declare your namespace, you're looking for the one that has the schema. So this here is going, can you see a schema thing here? So I'm going to grab this NS1. So I'll say NS1. And if you don't know what this is, if you look at the actual request message, you will notice that all of them, if I toggle it, okay. You'll notice that every tag has this V2, 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 all of them have it. And what's this V2? This V2 is essentially just pointing to the schema. So you know what a schema is. So this V2. So you can see that every tag has this V2. So it's the same thing I'm trying to do here. I know that I've declared in my namespace, everybody is pointing to this schema as well. So that's why I'm starting off with NS1. I can call this V2 as well. If I call this V2, it means this will be V2. But because it's NS1 by default, I can just carry on. So I have my tag. Now, where in your tag do you want to go? The first thing you have to put is your root element. So go back into that message. What's the root element? The root element here is this guy. See, consent management request. So you go back in here quickly and you type in your consent management. Sorry, it's response now, right? It's not request, it's response. So go into your response. Yeah, we're trying to grab this guy. So how do I get to this guy? I'm going to my response, see? So that's the root element. So you grab that, you copy that, bring that into your XPath, and you paste that in here. So now XML is started. It is known what this is. It goes into the root tag. Now the next thing is go back into your put CD, your response. I want this guy here because this is where I'm going. So I want the system consent directive. That's the next parent or the child element. So I'll copy that. I'll go into my thing. And same thing, don't forget your NS1. If you notice, it's only a single slash now. So the first one is a double slash. The next one is a single slash. And you now, don't forget your colon. This is the next one. Okay. And now I will put a slash again and go back into your request, this guy now. I want to get this guy. Now, because this is an element of this tag, to let SoapUI know that I'm trying to grab an element of a tag, we normally use the @ symbol. So I'll copy the instance ID, come back here as well, and I'll put my @ symbol, and I'll now put the tag. And this would get me that element I'm looking for. Now, if you notice the original one, I have this one and I have this one. What does that mean in XPath? That means that if this root element has a lot of consent, a lot of tags that has system consent directive, I'm telling it to pick the first one because that's the one I want. And that's to tell SoapUI that we use a square bracket to say, give me the first tag that you find that is system consent directive. And the reason why we've done that is in your response, I know the business requirement. A response might have sometimes more than one system CD coming back. So there might be 2 of this. There might be 3, right? So because I know that, I've now said, always get me the first one because I know is the first one I'm looking for. So that's why that has a 1. Same thing here as well, because I know that this guy can be multiple, right? So can also the instance ID can also be multiple. So to say, give me the first one, I can just say 1 as well. And we always make this a habit. It's just to play safe. Even if you know it's just one, but just to play safe, to know that your script would always work, then what you're trying to say is always give me the first one you find. So this is what we call the XPath. And once you know the XML structure, you can always you can get any XPath that you want. Let me give you another example very quickly. If I don't want this.
Questing, like with the example that we are already doing where we created
right.
a test.
Sure.
Because
we'll do that.
This to be a bit more complex. I haven't worked on this one, so looks like I'm not getting everything in this. So maybe the example that we created right now with test suite, or another example which with the same things, like how do we get the XPath and the properties.
Now, very quickly, if I was trying to get this tag here, title, because this is not an element, it's just a property. So this is probably a grandchild of this guy. I don't need the @ symbol. Just the backslash alone is enough. This @ symbol is only needed when I'm trying to get elements of the property, or sorry, properties of the element. And you know that because they would always have this look. You know, it would always be something like this, you know, the element first and the property of the element. So please know the difference between when you need an @ symbol and when you don't need an @ symbol. So if I'm trying to get this.
If there is no value, then you don't need an @ symbol, right? Or.
Yeah. So, well, what I'm trying to say is look at this title here. This title is very straightforward. It doesn't have any property. It's just a tag. This is the value, and it's straightforward. So I would just tell / get the title, and it returns this. But look at this. It's a tag, right? But it also has a property, and this is the property of that tag. So if I'm looking for the property of the tag, then it has to be / the tag, then @ the name of the property.
Okay.
So that's the difference between my @ symbol and over here I'm using an @ symbol, but if it wasn't a property, then I don't need this @ symbol. I don't need it. So that's the difference. Now, before we're done, the target. So this will return, this code here returns back some kind of value, right? This gives you some kind of, it returns back a value. So you're telling now SoapUI where you want this value to go. Where do you want it to go? So we want this value, we now select the target. So my target is, I'm saying my revoke system CD, which is this guy here, that's a test case. And so that's how I picked it here. See, number 2, revoke system CD. Then your property. Now you're saying the property is now system CD instance ID. How do we create a property? This property, I will show you system CD instance ID. Remember it. If I go into this revoke system CD, you will notice here that I have right there, system CD instance ID. I have this property. So that's how SoapUI knows that, oh, okay, the $ means a variable. It means go get the variable. And it knows that, okay, what you're trying to tell me now is this thing here at runtime, I have to go get the variable and replace the value with the thing you showed me. But let me see if I can find where we declared this variable. So system CD instance ID, okay. Over here you have it, system CD instance ID. We have it there. And I'm telling it that it's from the test case. So it knows, okay, it's from the same test case. And that's how it replaces it. But where did we declare this system CD instance ID? There's a place where you declare it. Okay.
Actually, I'm not getting much in this.
Don't worry, you'll get it. I will do it. I will do it in the German example, then you'll get it. Now, watch what I've done. In the test case, I have a property declared, and I call that property system CD instance ID. And if you notice, every time I run it, the value is now showing up. So is this value that is getting transferred basically from here to here. Now, I've explained, but let's use the German example. I just wanted to show you how we do it, then I'll go into the German example and I'll show you. So now let's try the German one. So the German one, we've set something up here. So the first thing we have to create is, let's create a property, a variable, right? So you click on your test case. I have a test case 001. Now, please watch what I'm doing here. You're going to custom properties, and I'll click on the plus sign to add a variable. I'm trying to add a property because that's what I'll be using to move the data from anywhere I want it to be. So I can maybe call it bank sort code. Okay. Now it has no value. Just press enter. So this test case now has a property that is called bank sort code. In this place here, I'm trying to move this guy. This is my sort code. Okay. I want to get, or maybe let's say this one. I want to use this guy all the time. In my property transfer, now let's do it together now. So my property transfer, let's create a new property transfer. What do you want to call it? We can call it, let's say transfer 1. Okay, so I called it transfer 1. Now, the first thing you have to do, declare your namespace. You got that? Okay, now once you declare your names, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've declared my namespace, right? I got it, I declared my namespace. Now it's telling me what's your source? Where do you want to read the value from? So I want to read it from the first script, which is getBank TC001. So make sure it's correct. Yep, it looks good. That's where I want to go. Now, what property do you want to read from? Is the response, right? I want to read from the response. Now it's now telling me, how do you want to get the value? XPath. I want to use XPath. So now I've declared my namespace. So I told you the first thing is you do your backslash.
So 1 minute. If somebody asks you to define, ask me to define namespace or XPath, so what do we say?
So you don't define it; it's given to you. The WSDO has a namespace. That's where we're getting it from. Do you notice here? I just pressed namespace, and it just gave me these values.
So by define, I mean like to explain what it is.
Oh, okay. A namespace is just is what defines the properties of the WSDO. It defines the behavior of the WSDO.
Okay.
That's all it is. It just defines the property and the behavior of the WSDO.
And XPath is the address of the element, right?
Very good. Yes. XPath is the address of the element.
Okay.
So now I'm trying to now get that element. So what we're trying to find is this guy, right? We want to get here. So how do we get here now in the XPath? So if you look at the code I showed you before, this is the code, right? So you can copy that. Let's put it in somewhere bigger for you so you can see it easily. All right. So let's go back into the bank example. And in here, you have, good. Okay. So the first thing is we declare the NS1, which is the same thing. Then we have a comma or colon, then the name of the root element in the response. So quickly go check what's the name of the root element. Can you tell me the name of the root element?
NS1.
Good. Is this one, right? Because if you notice, is the one that, see, once you have the body, you have the envelope, is the big daddy. So it's this guy. Get bank response. Yeah. So that's the root element.
So we just take get bank response, not the NS1, right?
Good. So what I'll do is I have my NS1 and this is the root element. Get bank response. And you will start noticing that they have a trend. You know, they all some response, you know. So yep, I got my first one. Now the second one is I now want my details. That's the next one. So same thing. NS1. Right. I always tell people to copy it so you don't miss any uppercase or lowercase. Right? Now, what's the next one? The next one is now, I want to get this guy, right? So, NS1. So
actually, you are finding the XPath only, right?
Good. So this here is the XPath. So this is the XPath for this value. So if I now copy this XPath, I put this into my property transfer. Now this code knows where to go read from. It knows that, okay, I know where you want me to go.
Yeah.
Now, what do you want to do with it? We want that value to be provided to this guy. We want that value to go here. So we'll call that value so first of all, let's select the test case. So it's okay, that's correct. Yep, TC003, property. Where do you want it to be? I want it to be this is where I will now select, let's see. I want to select the name of the variable. So go to property. I have so the name of my variable, I called it custom, sorry, there we go. Yeah, bank sort code. So this is what I called it.
Sorry, can you go from the point like where we declared the XPath? After that, I just sort of missed something, I think.
So yeah, right here.
And after that, we are using the target as the third test case, and from the property part, can you tell?
Okay, so let me. Okay, I will. Just give me a second. Okay.
So we need to put something in the property.
Yeah, in the target. But what I want to put is I want to put the name of the variable. So just give me a second. Property. Okay. System CD. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. System CD. Transfer name, system CD. Okay. All right. So I have to do this. Okay. I'm coming. I'll show you what I'm trying to do. So now in here, I will put that. Okay. Now I'm going to change this to the name of, I'll explain what I'm doing. I'll change the name to the name of my variable. The name of my variable is bank sort code. Okay. So go back into my bank sort code. This guy here. Okay, good. So that's my BLZ. Good. So if I close this guy, he has my test case. He has my $sign. Good, good, good. I can close it. Now, this guy here, property transfer. Declare name space.
So what's failing here?
It doesn't like the property transfer is failing.
Okay.
Just give me a second. Let's see why
Sure.
it's failing. Transfer name. Suite. System CD. There we go. I fixed it. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll explain what I've done. And then
Sure.
I have to run this now. Should pass. What? Bank sort code.
So XSDs is also one concept, like in this only, like the caching annotation in this also, or only, or is it a different?
Okay. Okay. All right. We got it. All right. So let's do it again. I'm going to start from scratch, so it's easier for you to understand.
Okay.
Let's pick a new test case. So let's start from fresh. All right. So we have verified bank 2, and you would like to pass. Give me a value. What value would you like to pass? So this is the this is the response. This is the request. So look at your request and tell me which value would you like to pass.
Berlin.
Okay, good. So let's say city. We would like to pass the city.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So the first thing you do is you need to create a variable to store the city. right? Now to create a variable, you will click on your test case and you go into what we call custom properties. Let me minimize this. So you click on your test case, custom properties. Now you click on the plus sign because I'm trying to create a variable. So I call that variable city and I'll save it. Now, because there's no value for city, I won't put anything in there, right? So the city is empty. So that's the first thing you'll do. Now, the next thing you'll do is, you know that you like to pass the city from this guy to the next test case. So you can either add the test case, the second one, you can add it to this test step, or you can create it manually. So I'll do it both ways. If I was to add it from here, what I'll do is you right click on this guy and I'll say add to test case. Now watch very carefully here. I'm going to say add this to test case number 2. So I'm saying basically I want this guy to be added to test suite number 1, test case number 2, and it will now get added here. So press OK. Now you notice you have 2 steps, the first one and the second one. I can also add it manually. To do it manually, I'll right click on my test step and I'll say add step. Then it's going to say, what do you want to add? I'm going to say I want to add a SOAP request. Then click on SOAP request. I can give it a name. You know, I'm doing it manually. I can say TC004, blah, blah, blah. Press OK. And now it's telling me which web service do you want to add. So I'm saying basically GetBank. So it's going to give me a copy of this web service, GetBank. Press OK. Press OK. Now I've done it manually. So I can do it this way. This one comes with the data already because I did it, you know, by just dragging this guy down, or I can do it from scratch. From scratch, you get a default message. Okay, so now you want to pass some data from this guy to this guy. So now I know that I need to add a property transfer. So I'll right click on my test step and I'll say add a property transfer. Give it a name. Maybe I want to transfer city, right? That's what you like to do. Transfer city name. Notice when I added it, it was added to the very bottom. But you know that you need this thing to be in between 2 and 3. So you drag it and you can place it between 2 and 3. So now every time I run this test suite, this GetBank runs first, then the property transfer runs next, then lastly, you know, the GetBank negative will go next. So clear so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's set up the property transfer. Let's set it up. So when you go there, it's empty. There's nothing in there. So let's create a new property transfer. I can call it transfer city, right? Press OK. Once I've done that, I now have to set the source and the target. So in the source, we have to tell it, where do you want to grab this variable from? So I want to grab this variable from, the first one, TC002. So that's fine. And which property do you want to grab from? I want to grab from the response of TC002. And how do you want to grab it? Well, I want to use XPath to grab it. So now we have to use the annotation of XPath. So I told you the first annotation is you need to declare your namespace. And in SoapUI, you don't have to worry about that. Just push on this NS, and that will give you the code to declare your namespace.
So what's the annotation here? Like
the annotation is the syntax, which I'm going to write now. These are the annotation. Annotation is you have your backslash, the forward slash, and your @ symbol. You need to know when to use that. And lastly, your namespace. These are the annotations for XPath. And I explained to you when to use each of these annotations. Also, I'm going to show you the annotations for variable, which is your $sign and your hash symbol.
Okay. So, sure. Thank you.
So I'm going to show you all these annotations. I have before, but I'll repeat it again. So you need to know the following annotations.
Okay.
Okay, so the first annotation is always you start off an XPath with a double slash. That's the same in Selenium. Any XPath, we always start off the XPath with the annotation of double backslash. Then the next thing you need is the root element. So I'm going to go find the root element of this request message. So I'll click on this request message and I'll go into the response. And I know right away the root element is this guy here, get bank response. This is the parent element because I know that every XML, they have the envelope, they have the body, some of them have the header. So that's always common. But this here is unique to this guy. So this is the root element. So annotation, double backslash, then your root element. So I'll bring that here and I'll paste that. Always try to paste because XML is case sensitive. So if I put uppercase E here, it would not work. So lowercase, so that's your first annotation. Now the next annotation, I've missed something out already. I missed out the name of the namespace. So your backslash, then it goes with your colon, then your namespace. Can you see? So double backslash, the name of your namespace, then colon, root element. So double backslash, the name of my namespace, colon, and my root element. So that's the first XPath you need to memorize or you need to know. Then going forward to now get the child element, I don't need a backslash anymore. It's just one single slash. So this tells SoapUI that, okay, this is the root element, right? And anything else is the child element. So the same thing, your namespace, colon, and what do we want to get? I want to get city. So city in this guy here, city is Berlin. But before I can get to Berlin, there's also a child. Berlin is actually the grandchild. So we have to also get the name of the child. So go back into your annotation here is the name of your child, good, and your backslash. So these are your XPath annotations that you need to know. All right, so we'll keep going. We've done the parent, we've done the child. Now we want to go to the grandchild because city is this. So same thing, I'll copy this and I'll bring this into my city. And don't forget your namespace and you have your city. So that's how you find that element. I explained something else to you and I said elements sometimes have properties. Let's say, for example, this thing here had a property that was, let's say, English. And maybe English was now, I don't know, EN, something like this, right? And if I'm now trying to get this tag, I need to let SoapUI know that this tag also has an element. And to do that, that was the example I showed you above. We need to use the @ symbol. So once you're done your slash, right, you now use the @ symbol. So that's what I did here. And that's why I showed you that first. So you need to know when to use your backslash and when to use backslash and the @ symbol. So that's another annotation. So let me quickly show you the example. And that's why I started off with that one, because that one has, now watch what we're trying to do here. We're trying to read this element, but this element has a property called instance ID. So how do I specify to SoapUI that the XPath should be instance ID? This is what we did. See this code? You now know this. You know how to do this. You know how we got this. Now, once I got to the instance ID, if you notice, I didn't even put the name of the namespace anymore. There's no need for the namespace. There's no need for a colon. I just went straight away and I said, give me @ at, at instance ID. So SoapUI knows, oh, okay. I found the name of the element. Now the @ symbol is the property. The next thing I showed you in the next annotation is your square brackets. When do we use square brackets? We use square brackets to let SoapUI know if I have multiple tags with the same names. So I'm telling it, give me the first one, or give me the second one, or give me the third one. So SoapUI knows that, okay, if I have multiple elements that are called system consent directive multiple times, then it knows that by saying one, it knows Ty wants the first one and not the second one. You got it?
Oh, yeah.
So I've taught you now in the terms of annotation, you know what the double backslash is, you know what the single black backslash is, you know what your @ symbol is, you know what the namespace is, and you know what your square bracket is used for. But let me test you. Let me give you, go back to your class notes. Can you give me the XPath to find, so in the restaurant we did. Yeah, perfect. No, this one here. Give me the XPath to find Harry Potter. Can you type out that for me? So I want to basically, this is the XML, and I want to store this Harry Potter as a variable. Give me the XPath.
Okay. So double backslash slash.
Type it into SoapUI. Sorry, type it into Join Me.
Sure.
All righty. Let's see. So you have your NS1, okay. You have your bookstore, very good. Now you have your backslash, okay, NS1. You have your book category, very good. So book category, you now have, in the book category, you missed something out. You missed out the element for the book category because there are two book categories. So which one? Which one? See, book category. This is also book category. This is also book category.
Okay.
So you can either use a square bracket to say book category 1 or book category 2. So it knows, okay, it's this one. But right now this is wrong because it doesn't know which XML. But let's assume you put the square bracket 2. So it knows, okay, book category 2. Now, when it gets to book category 2, you have a slash NS1 title.
Yeah.
Then it should now be slash again. So let me help you. So you were close, but you didn't get it fully.
So this is like you put a 2 here, and then.
Okay, let me do it for you. So you were close, but so you started with your double backslash. Namespace, most of the time is NS1, right? Go back into that document, class note. NS1, good. Now I have bookstore. So your colon, bookstore. So that's the first one. It starts, boom. Then we have book category, book category. So we're gonna go book. The next one is book. So NS1, book. And once I get to book, I can say is the second one. So book NS1, book NS1 at, okay, so I can just say book 2. I can do this. So he knows right away that, okay, Ty wants to come here. Sorry. Ty wants to come here. This is the second book. Now, once you get a book, I can now say title. So it goes in title. So let's do title. So title, you do this. NS1, title. Now, once you get a title, because title now has a property that is called English. So I will now use my backslash English. So backslash at, so there's no even need for NS1, at English, or whatever it is, right here. Lang, oh, sorry, Ellen Lang, at Lang. So that's it.
Okay, so first one, like where we are doing book, is it like the book category we do that way?
So I can do it this way, or I can do it this way as well. I can say, because I use 2. I use book 2, so he knows, okay, Ty just wants to go to my book right here. Because I'm not really interested. I mean, I can say book categories children, but because I know if I say 2, it just counts. Okay, I have book 1, I have book 2, and it stops here. But I can also do it the long way, which is to specify the category. So to specify the category, this is what I'll do. It will be essentially this book. When I get to book, I will now say at, do you get it? Book at category. So I'll say book at category. Book at category. Okay, like that. And it was okay. So Ty is saying it gets into book at category. I can also even say book at category. I can also do this. Is equal to children. So I can do this. Book category is equal to children.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do this as well. But it's just quicker to just do book number 2, right? That's so much faster. But I can do this. I can say bookstore, okay, book. Once you get to book, which one? Well, the one where at category is children. Okay, all right, I know what you're saying now. Then it goes, then once I get there, what should I do next? You now go back to your backslash again, NS1, continue your business, NS1. What do you want now? You want the title. So same thing here, title. Once you get a title, what do you want? Title has the element called land. So this is another way of doing it. But I think the first one is just so much quicker and faster, right? So you're saying, give me the tag, number 2 tag. Always do it this way. It's cleaner, better, you know. You just count it. Okay, the second book, and it goes there. Second book. Once I get there, what should I do? Find now title. Okay, so this is the title. Once I get there, what should I do? Go to your element lang and get me the data there. Okay, title, lang, okay, then it gets it. Okay, so that's your annotation. That's every annotation you need to know. It all has to do with your backslashes, your this, your at symbol, your square brackets.
And this dollar and hash?
Yep, I'll get there next. All right, so let's go back into SoapUI, go back into our bank example. So we were trying to pass a bank name, right? So we typed out the XPath, and we now want to put that XPath into a variable. So we declared a variable in our test case. We called the variable, we called it city, right? And we're taking the city from this guy here, from this guy. So we said this guy has, no. I think that was one that added this. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're taking this guy. All right. So in our XPath, you can now see how we got there. So we just very straightforward, and we got there. Now, what do we do with it? We do something with it. We now select what we do with it. So I'm saying put this in my negative test bank and put it. Now, there's nothing showing up here. So please delete your namespace. You don't need anything here. Delete it. And now I will now go into my bank number 3. And in this ABC, I'll now replace it with the name of the variable. So I'm going to teach you another annotation just right now. In SoapUI, when you're trying to tell the response or the input, then I'm going to give you a variable. How do we do that? We do variables by using the following annotation. So variables, we use the $sign and the hash symbol. So these are the last 2 annotations I will teach you. Now, the $sign is what tells SoapUI that this guy, it's a variable. Then we also use these brackets, and the XPath is where I find it, to say, where do I find this variable? So I'm going to say it's in the same test case. It's in the same test case. Then, okay, once I get to the test case, what's the name of the variable? So if you look at it, I declared the variable. I call it custom properties. I call it city. So I'm saying in the same test case, go find the property city. So now SoapUI knows that, okay, every time they call me, I have to check my test case and go check for the variable called city.
Okay.
So that's how we use the $sign and the hash symbol and your curly bracket. So let's go back here to see what I did.
So
in
the dollar, the hash is telling it is a variable, and the dollar is telling it's a variable, and hash is telling it's in the same test case, right?
You got it. Yes. So this is the XPath. It's essentially an XPath, right? It's an address that's telling it is in the same test case. The $sign is what tells SoapUI that this is a variable. Okay. That will keep changing every time. And we put variables, we put them in a curly bracket. So look at what I've done here as well. In this tag here, I'm trying to generate a random number every time I run this request. So I'm telling SoapUI that this is a variable because it's going to keep changing every time. So that's why I have the $sign, and that's why I have my curly bracket. So this is just a JavaScript function that I called, and this would always generate a random number every time. But this is different. This is coming from a variable. This is not a random number. This is a variable. So this here is the XPath for that variable. And it's just saying, check your test case and go find the name of this variable. So the same thing we've done here. So in my third test case now, I'm now taking my $sign squarely bracket. I'm now saying in the same test case, go find city. So once you have that, I can now select that from here. If I go select, this will now show me the, okay, if it's not showing you, maybe run it first of all, and let's see what will happen. Okay, say missing target property. Okay, how do I select it? Oh, sorry, I always forget. Select the test case. Don't select the name. Select your test case because that's where the variable is. Since my variable is in my test case, so always select your test case, and you see right away, city, it's right there. So if I run this now, voila, see, Berlin was transferred. And it was transferred from 2 to 3. So 3 now should have Berlin. So if I run this guy, it should fail because, Berlin is not a valid BLZ, but you can now see that the value was generated at runtime. So that's XPath and annotations. See, okay. I'm running all of them and they all just getting the value. So I think that's enough not to confuse you for an interview. But an interview, they might give you something like this and tell you to find the XPath, right? They might give you something like this and say, get me the XPath for this, right? They might give you something like this and say, get me the XPath for this. If it doesn't have an attribute, then it's straightforward. You don't need your @ symbol, but please don't forget that they might try to trick you by giving you an attribute. So you need to know, right, how to use it. So these are all the annotations, and that's how we use our XPath.
How about the XSDs and the caching? How do we use that?
So you asked me a question about WSDL. If your WSDL fails, what you do is this. If your WSDL fails, it will tell you the error message. Like when you're trying to upload a WSDL, when you're creating the project, and if it fails, SoapUI will tell you the reason why the WSDL has failed.
Okay.
So it's now left to you to now, take that error message and show it to a developer.
Okay.
So yeah, so if they're asking an interview, what do you do when a WSDL fails? You just tell them, SoapUI will show me why it failed. It will show me the message. Then I will just take that to a developer.
So it can be different failures like 400 or 500, anything can be there, right? 400 if it is a wrong WSDL or something.
Yeah, it will show you. Most of the time is always the WSDL is corrupt or the WSDL. Okay, let me give you an example. Perfect. I found one here. SoapUI, if you go into their website, they have getting started. Okay, good. Perfect. If you go on their website and you're trying to learn how to use SoapUI, they have some WSDLs in here, and some of them don't work, right? Let's try this one. Let's try number conversion. So I give you this WSDL, you join my company, good. Now let's see. If you're trying to create this project now, to say new soap, and I paste the WSDL here, Oh, they fixed it. It's working now. Number to dollar. Let me see. It's working now. It's funny.
Okay.
It's working now. They fixed it. Before, it wasn't working. So let me copy. But anyways, you get an error message. That's where I'm going. You know, the first time you create it, you get an error message, and that would essentially just, oh, wow, look at this web service. This is a perfect one. Look at that. Look at one web service. Look at how many things it has.
Yeah.
He has a lot of, so this might be a good test for you to see if you can test each one of them, read the whistle, and try to play with your property transfer. Move things from up and down and see how that will help you. Yeah. But anyways, you get a message saying the whistle is broken, something is broken, and it's not really a tester's job. You just take that to a developer and ask them why it's broken.
Okay.
So the last thing you were asking me about was an XSD file, right?
And caching.
That's right? XSD.
XSD and caching.
Okay, sure.
And what we do when the XPath fails? What happens?
Good. So if your XPath fails, you have to correct it, right? You need to fix it because that's you. That's not SoapUI. Watch.
Okay.
If I didn't put something here now, say for example, if maybe I forgot this T, right? This will make my XPath fail, and that's really my fault. So if your XPath fails, you get a message. Now this is telling me no. It's saying there's nothing in there because it can't find this tag. But what if I put back the T? Okay, let me run it. Berlin is coming back. But what if I do something wrong in my annotation like that? Oh, that still works. Let me say bank 1. Yeah, if you have the wrong XPath, it will tell you that, is null. And that way you know that, okay, you're not getting back the right value that you should be getting back. But if your XPath fails, generally is you, meaning if you're getting back a null, then your XPath is wrong. You're not doing the right thing. All right, let me try maybe 2. Good. Good. See now, I've done something very wrong because this name path doesn't exist. When I run my test case, I will get a failure. And SoapUI will now tell you the error message. So it's telling me now my XPath, my transfer failed, and this is the reason. It's telling me the XPath syntax error, see, on line number 2. And it's saying prefix PNS2 has not been declared. So if your XPath fails, the answer is read your error message and try to fix it. So I can see right away why my XPath failed. It's telling me the prefix NS2 has not been declared. So I'll go back quickly into this, see where NS2 is. Oh, NS2, that should be NS1 because this here is my NS1. Then once you fix it, go back again to your test case and run it. And now it passed.
Okay.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so the last one you asked for was your XLD file. So the XLD file is an XML schema file and is essentially a text-based file that validates your request message. And what happens, when I did this, when I said validate, remember I did this earlier on? What I'm doing is I'm saying validate, This OK, all it's doing is SoapUI went to get the XSD file, which is the schema file, and it compared the schema file to my response or my request to make sure that it's working OK. That's all that file is. In fact, we don't need it. We don't need to see it, but we just know what it does because we know that that file allows me to validate if this guy is correct. It allows me to validate if this guy is correct. Because watch, the XLD file knows that my response should always return 4 things. 1, 2, 3, 4. If one was missing, say one was missing, and I'm a new tester to the project. Oh, okay, it won't let me delete it. If one was missing, for example, and I try to validate this thing, it would fail because it's saying, well, I'm not getting back all 4 of them. And if you want to see what this XSD file looks like, is right here. Double click on your project and you will see it in the overview. So this here is my WSDL definition. So I showed you how to generate your WSDL document. You can see that this WSDL has one web service called GetBank that we've been playing with. You can see the endpoint where the WSDL lives. And here, this here is your XSD. And it's just basically, I showed it to you before. You can read it this way, or you can read it in the HTML way. Remember I showed you how to read it this way? It's the same thing. Remember I showed you this? Now this here is your XSD document. And it's just basically a schema that defines to you what your request message should look like. Can you see? XSD, so it's just, you know, and this is very important because this is what allows me to validate. So whenever I'm running this validate, that's all SoapUI does. He just calls this guy, checks it to make sure I didn't break anything, you know, make sure that, okay, that should be a string, that should be a string, that should be a string. Minimum occurrence means 0. That means it's optional, right? It's telling me the name of the tag should be this, 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 this. If the name of the tag doesn't match this, it's going to fail, right? It will fail validation.
Mostly it tells about the schema for the request, right?
What? You got it. You got it.
So how will it fail? How will the XSD fail?
Oh, XSD will not fail because that's the truth. But your request might fail the XSD. When I give you a WSDL, I'm also giving you the XSD because that's the rule, that's the requirement. But you can mess up, you can fail, you can cause your request to fail. Now watch, if I do something here that's illegal, maybe I'm trying to create my own request message. This response doesn't exist in the XSD. So if I run this, number one, it fails. But let's see if this guy will pass validation. No, it doesn't. And it's telling me now that the XSD is saying, I don't understand this tag. See, it's saying expected element BLZ, but instead you gave me BLZ1.
Okay.
So this is because you have now failed a schema validation.
So basically 2 ways to find the schema. To see the schema, one is the first one that you showed how to open, right click and open the definition, right? And
Very
that
good.
will, and the second way is double click and then you can see that, right?
Good, yes.
On the page. And usually like when XSD, they say XSD phase, it means that you mess up something in the request, like in the tags you make a different value, or if it is a float value you give a character value, then it might fail.
Very good, very good. You got it. Good, good job. What if I do this? If I put 2 in there, maybe I'm new to the project, I put 2 in there, same thing. This tag is valid, but the XSD is saying I'm only expecting 1, right? See, I'm not expecting 2.
And the response gives 400 or 500, some error message is there in the response.
Yeah, this is just telling you the server is saying, oh, it done something wrong. See, unexpected sub-element. It's telling you as well what you've done wrong. Unexpected sub-element.
Got it, yeah. So caching, how do we do?
Caching is your variable. Caching is when you store values so you can reuse them at a different time. That's what we call cache. And you can see how I've stored the variable. So I created my variable. I called it custom property. See, city. So this here is a cache. I've cached the value city. And anywhere in this test case, I can always refer back to the cache value. So your cache is essentially your variable when you're saving your variable. And we do that because we cache it once, then we can always reuse it as many times as needed. Okay.
Okay. So it's basically you are having, defining the variables and reusing it, that's caching.
Exactly. So basically now SoapUI has to store this somewhere on my computer, somewhere in my memory, because every time I run this, you have to go there and retrieve that value and give it to the next person that needs it.
So I feel annotation, caching, XPath, and the property transfer all are around the same concept.
Very good. Now you got it. You got it. Good. Okay. So I think that's a lot passed on to you. So I think now let's go back to what I said I was going to teach you today.
Yeah, REST or something is there.
Yes. So, but REST is all the same thing. The only difference is the language is not XML, it's JSON. But we've done this, we've done type, we've done this, we've done how to automate, we've done XPath, we've done annotation, we've done caching, which is your variable, right? We've done assertions. Now you know how to do that. XPath, yeah. So I've given you pretty much, I think, enough to make you do well on the job interview. Now for REST, very quickly because of time, REST, the only difference in REST is a lot easier to create and test. You know how we have to go read the WSDL or the XXSD to know what my data type should be, what my name of my web service should be? In REST, is a lot easier. REST, let me show you. If I want to create a REST project, see, there's no WSDL. It's just asking me for the endpoint. Give me your endpoint. Tell me where the web service lives. So that's a lot easier. And in the class note I gave to you, I gave you a video as well on REST. And I gave you a web service example.
Okay.
Let me see. If you go into your class notes, you can go try out the REST I gave you right here.
Okay.
So this is a URI given to you. So you can copy that URI, put it into your project, press OK.
Okay.
Now look at that. Now REST is simple. See, right away, I have everything I need. So the only difference here in REST is they all have the same methods. Everybody has the same method. And the popular methods in REST is get, which is you're trying to get something from the web service. Delete, you're trying to delete something from the web service. Put, you're trying to put something into the web service. So those are the popular web services that we normally use in REST.
So the difference between post and put is like when you post, you are just sending the values, but when you're putting, you are updating some part of that, right?
Very good. There you go.
Modifying it.
You got it.
Okay.
So everything else is the same. It's the same way we create test cases. It's the same way we do assertions, the same way we do XPath, is the same way we do property transfer. Everything is the same. The only difference here is REST is not security conscious because they want to make it easy for everybody to call. Everybody wants to call it. So once you know the method, that's it. You know your method, you know your endpoint. This is the name of the REST web service you're testing, and parameters is your data. You know, what data are you trying to put? So if I double click on this, it's asking me, okay, Ty, give me your password. You know, I can provide a password. This is my data. Just like SOAP, question mark is when they're asking you for something. But it's also really easy as well. See, here I can change the value. See, if maybe this guy is ABC, it's change. See, red, I can change the value here as well. I can make it maybe right. It's change. So all I'm doing is just adding, you know, my parameters here, and I'm just selecting my method, and I'm testing.
Okay. And you, like, suppose you're getting it, and then you press that play button, right?
Right, exactly. You press the play button.
And the response will come here, right?
And the response will come here. And the same thing. Okay.
And can you just show quickly with an example this one?
Okay, sure. So I'll go into SoapUI. Let's see if they have an easier example here. SoapUI. So you can also try the same thing. Go to getting started.
Okay.
Where is it? To get it started. Let's find a REST example. So I think they have, yep, your first REST project. So they'll give you a URI.
So what's the difference between URI and a URL?
A URI contains your endpoint, and it contains your parameters that you're trying to test with, and it contains that's it, your endpoint and your parameter. You know, some call it URL, you know, but we just call it URI when you're doing REST. Now, okay, your first REST project, good. Create REST project from URI. Okay, so where's the link? To create a new REST project, specify the URI path. So where is it? Show picture. Okay. Okay, let's try this. Maybe this is it. I don't know. I'm trying to use an easy example so that I don't. Let's see if this will work.
If
okay.
This works, can you ping me that one? This.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I'll ping you but you know, I have a better example for you in your class notes. If you follow it step by step, you know, this will kind of tell you how to test the REST, and you can see what the response looks like, so you can follow it. But if you want the simple one, the simple one here, I'll ping you this URI. So this URI, there you go. So if you create it, you know, you can just see it show up on your screen, and you can see right away the method is get. This is the endpoint. This is my resource, which is the web service I'm trying to test. And there's no parameter. There's no data for this. So it's just a get. And if you notice now that once I push play, XML was by default, and it's saying, sorry, we don't use XML. But JSON is the language that REST always uses. And this is the response. So it's just telling me, I think there's this is a pet store, and it's telling me some information about the pet store. So it's giving me their email, it's giving me the kind of pets they have, you know, and it's very similar to XML. You know, you can see the tags here as well. I have a name, description, you know, just blah, blah, blah. I have a name description. So it's the same thing. So if I want an XPath to this person, you know, I know that there are a lot of names. So maybe if I want this one, it will be name 1. If I want this one, it will be name 2. If I want this one, name 3, right? Name. So it's the same way, same thing. And that's XPath. Now, some people, sometimes they don't like XPath, they don't like JSON. They might maybe want to change it to XML. It depends on the web service. If the web service has an XML, you can change it this way and still push play and see saying unknown. So it means this web service, they only recognize JSON. Because when I changed it to XML, oh, okay, you back?
Yeah.
All right. So what I was trying to say was some REST web service, they understand both languages. They understand JSON and they also understand XML, while some of them is only JSON. And the way we change it is, you know, we change the language on the end to say JSON. See, that works because he understands JSON. But if I change it back to XML and I try to run it, it might not work.
So why is the REST called like less secure than SOAP?
Because think about it, right? I didn't have to go read anything. You didn't give me anything. I can easily guess this URL. I can easily guess it. You know, somebody can easily guess it. I didn't have to go read any wisdom. You didn't give me any wisdom. You know, and every REST method, they have the same methods, all of them. So REST is easy to guess. You know, so a lot easier.
Endpoint here. And
very good. Good. I know that Facebook now, it should be maybe facebook.com/login, you know, that will be what will allow me to log into Facebook.
And how about this resource? What is this here? Like endpoint is where it is hitting. But what is the resource in here?
So that's the name of the web service. So Swagger, you see, we're basically testing Swagger. That's what we tested. And it's a version 2. Maybe on this endpoint, they have version 3 for Swagger. Maybe they have version 1 for Swagger. Maybe they have version 5 for Swagger. So that's how we test it.
Okay.
So this is just the name. It's just the name of the web service. But it is you can easily guess it. It's very easy to find. If I go to this website, I can probably see all the different web services they have. Yeah.
And can we have all these things that whatever we did with the SOAP, like the XPath, assertions, and all those stuff, is it possible here in REST also, like the property transfer, everything?
Do you have any questions?
Yeah. So what I'm asking is that whatever we did with the SOAP, like the XPath, finding the XPath, the property transfer, and all those stuff, is it possible in the REST also?
Yeah. Everything is the same thing. It's all the same.
Oh, same ways. Okay.
Is all the same thing, yes.
No, is there any limitation that some things you can do in SOAP and you cannot do in REST like that?
Nope, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to send you the video